Hi, welcome to my first devlog for Phonetic Evolver. Today, I'll just be guiding you through the GUI that I made so far. So, as you can see, the GUI works as follows. There will be tabs on the left, and in each tab there will be local tabs. So, in the tree tab, there will be a tree visualization of all the nodes and how they're connected to each other, like so that it will be very easy to see how languages are related to each other. And in this program, when you name a generation, you must include the year so that it can properly appear in the timeline at the correct time. In the RootWordList tab is where you can add words to whichever generation you want to. So let's say I could say add word, and then what's this? There's an error. This entry must have content. Alright, so let's say I say word, I make the definition word, and the generation it appears in, let's say I select G1. How did it know about these generations? How did it know that these exist? Well, behind the scenes, I added a couple generations as shown here, so that in the generation appears list, you can go and select from drop-down menu. And I say behind the scenes because it's not a feature that I added in the GUI yet. These buttons are also fully functional, so you can load up a file with the root word list that you saved in the past, and the save button will also make sure to show you any errors you may have. So let's say if I remove at1 and I press save, without at1 it says the generation name at row 1 must include a year after the name with the notation generation at the year. So now I know that I need to do a at and then the number of the year. So let's say if I do at 3, which is not a valid generation because there's no h1 at the year 3. Press save, it still doesn't let me because the generation name at row 1 does not exist. Very simple. So I change it back to row 1 and now press save, and the entry at 2 and the column word is empty. It's not allowed to be empty. Great. So now in the sound changes tab, this is where you get to see all your generations in a drill down type menu. So you see there's two root nodes, like imagine this as PIE and this as, let's say, Proto-Japonic. So over here I have one child node H2 at the year 2. Over here I have G1 with a child G1.5 and G2. G2 has a child G3, and this is sort of like a clone that G3 is a parent of H2 while H1 is also a parent of H2, so that H2 gets all the words from H1 and G3. Look at the graph over here for what's going on. The testing tab is just where I'm testing out some stuff. So yeah, it's just random right now. It's nothing happening. Settings is also empty. Alright, so what I plan on doing for the next week or so is to add row numbers to each of these root word list rows so that their messages make more sense, because let's say if I say save now, it says the entry at row 1, and if let's say it would say the entry at row 87, you would be very hard pressed to find which row that is. So it's very important to have the row numbers. And I'm also gonna add a delete row button somewhere over here to delete a row, because currently, let's say if I add tons of rows like this, it's not actually possible to delete any of these now. So if you want to save it, it's going to tell you that one of them is empty. If you don't want it, you should be able to delete them. And another thing I'm going to do is that when you load up a root word list file, it should change the name of the tab to the file that's open. Alright, so I'll check back in when I'm done. So it's been a couple of days, and as you can see, I added labels on the side of each row with a number to show you what row number it is. And I also added on the right side delete buttons, so that, let's say if you want to delete octo, number 6, if I go over here, press delete, you'll see octo is gone, and that, gap, and u are all numbered correctly in the list. They don't keep their old numbers, they update along with the new number order. And when you add words, you can see that it adds it all correctly. But the problem is that now there was a side effect from adding the delete button, that when I do, let's say, G, it doesn't show the drop-down menu anymore. And the reason why I wasn't able to keep the drop-down menu is because GTK, the graphical user interface builder program I'm using to build this, implementation to the programming language that I'm using to write this program is not complete. So many things aren't available yet for me to use, one of which is the drop-down menu. I was able to get around that before by using a very interesting roundabout feature, but I can't use that anymore now that I added the trash cans. So too bad. We'll have to wait until the guy that makes it updates the GTK Taraku implementation interface implementation. Adding the numbers on the side was very hard for me because first of all, I'm a noob when it comes to building programs using GTK, and second of all, in the GTK Taraku implementation that I'm using, doing get children on any container, which means things like lists or grids, causes the whole program to freeze. So, which is why I wasn't able to do it, because how do you put numbers on the side of every row? You have to go for each row, add a number to the side of it. So, but in order to do that, I need to get all the rows, but I wasn't able to because the program would just freeze for some reason. I don't know why. So I made a bug report that doing get children on a container causes the application to freeze. So if he ever solves it, then that would be great. But so far he didn't respond yet. So how was I able to implement it? By doing a get children in this specific context. For some reason it doesn't freeze. I'm not sure why, but great that it doesn't. And instead of going through each child, I get the length of the children, and then I do on the grid a get child at. So instead of doing a get children and then for each child updating the contents of the child, I update the contents of each child through a get child at. Lastly, I said I was going to add the names of the file that you open at the top of the tabs, but I didn't get around to it. Something else that I did do was I added the open as new button over here, which opens the file that you open in a new tab, and I edited the load here button to show that it loads up the contents of the file that you open here locally. So to show you as an example, if I press load here and I open up a file, you see it loads up over here. So the open as new button, what it does is, let's say if I open a new file, and you see it open a new tab with all the contents in here in the new tab. And I'll have to get around to fixing that the tab over here doesn't look the same, but this is what I have so far. Another thing I have to work on is the X's on the tabs. It doesn't function yet, it's just there because I'm still messing around with it. So the next thing I'm going to do is get it to work. And another thing I'm going to work on is getting the tab names to change based on the files that you open. Catch you when I finish.